Impaler might have been outnumbered 10-1 by the Turks, but he made sure they knew he was crazier than them. Like when he took 20,000 of them in a field, shoved stakes up their asses, and made a people forest out of their dead bodies for the rest of their soldiers to come across. Welcome to the story of Vlad Dracula III. He was born in the back half of 1431, in either November or December, but he has heavy Scorpio vibes, so I'll probably say November. In modern-day Romania, previously Wallachia. But all of that is kind of just an educated guess at the end of the day, because we don't have the exact specifics of where or when he exited the birth canal. And for this channel, a hazy birth record isn't exactly a common occurrence, but Vlad the Impaler's bloodline is hazy in general. His father, Vlad II, was the ruler of Wallachia, and his mother is relatively unknown. It's possible it was his father's first wife, or it might have been one of his many mistresses. But it doesn't really matter who his mother is, because in this part of the world, only your daddy matters for royalty. And his daddy is Vlad Dracul, who was raised as a noble and had battled all of his illegitimate siblings and cousins to be the ruler of the Wallachian region. But it's stressful, because on one side we have crumbling empires, on the other side we have powerhouse empires, and then we have all these little voivodeships and kingdoms kind of in between. The Turks are over there trying to capture Constantinople. It's a whole thing. And when Vlad the Impaler is born, a bunch of the nobles are trying to decide if it's best to stick with Christian Europe in the HRE or join the Ottoman Empire. Since this area is hotly contested and multi-religious with pagans, Jewish, Protestants, you name it. And Vlad's father himself did have a rocky road ruling the region, but he aligned pretty heavily with the Christians to protect the area from Ottoman invasion. In the year little Vlad the Impaler is born, his father joins the Order of the Dragon, a Christian land defender group, and receives the moniker Dracul, which in turn had his sons adopt the name Dracula, signifying the son of Dracul, and providing Bram Stoker a sick-ass name for his vampire 400 years later. But Vlad wasn't the only Dracula, since he had at least 3 brothers. He had Mircea, Radu the Handsome, and Vlad the Monk. And as a kid, it's important that Vlad is preparing for a hard-fought life that he's gonna have to live, if he's one day going to take over as the ruler and religious defender of the area. And so his education is heavy in horseback riding, hunting, archery, court etiquette, war strategy, swimming, jousting, tracking, and combat, which he loved as a little prince. He also has the classics like reading, writing, math, history, and like I said, it is hotly contested, so there is some major political deaths and transfer of power in the early life of Vlad the Impaler as well, which introduces us to John Hunyadi. John had taken over as the leader of the neighboring Transylvania, and John had a real passion for killing the Turks. It was basically all he ever cared about, which, to be fair, a lot of Christians had a boner for protecting this region specifically, since it acted as the Iron Gate for keeping the Ottoman invasion out of the rest of Europe. And like I said, it is very multi-power, multi-religious here, but the two with the most gas, aka a whole militarized empire behind them, are the Catholics with the Holy Roman Empire and the Islamic Turks with the Ottoman Empire, since the Turks have already captured most of the land from the crumbling Byzantine Empire. And John Hunyadi was always asking Vlad the Impaler's daddy to help him fight the Turks, and he wanted Wallachia to insist against the invasion of Transylvania. But Big Vlad actually mostly just ignored John Hunyadi's stupid ass. He was very strategic with when he helped, but he did help sometimes, and by March 1442, they had largely secured the southern border of Hungary from the Ottomans. So this was actually proving to be a pretty effective alliance. But this Transylvania-Wallachian link-up really pissed off the Turks, and they started accusing Vlad the Impaler's dad of treason. And by this point, Vlad the Impaler is a teenager, so him, his brother Radu, and his daddy all end up at the court of the Ottoman Sultan. And everybody goes to jail. They all get imprisoned. But Vlad the Impaler's dad, Daddy Vladdy, is trying to negotiate the family out of fucking jail, and eventually it's decided that he owes the Ottoman Empire a debt, and his sons, Vlad, the teenage Impaler, and Radu will stay at the Sultan's court as hostages until Daddy Vladdy's debt is paid. This is ultimately happening because both the Ottoman Sultan and the Hungarian king believe that the region of Wallachia belongs to them, meaning they both believe that Vlad the Impaler's father should be working for them. And they are enemies. So Vlad the Impaler's dad drops his kids off at jail and then heads back to the region only to find that John Hunyadi has replaced him as the leader with Vlad the Impaler's weird boyer cousin. So the Ottomans come and they try to remove John Hunyadi's government, but John Hunyadi kind of beats the absolute piss out of them and they retreat, so. And even though he's in the middle, Vlad the Impaler's dad is trying his best to kind of stay out of the conflict because obviously the Ottomans have his kids in jail. So he's trying to find some sort of diplomatic solution for the absolute fuckery that is the Ottoman and Christian fight. It doesn't work at all. And actually, when Team Jesus finds out that Vlad the Impaler and his brother Radu are at the Ottoman court, they fucking lose it. And they absolutely attack the shit out of Vlad the Impaler's dad to the point that the Ottomans have to straight up save him. And they do manage to get him briefly back on the throne of Wallachia. And Vlad Sr.'s oldest son is with him through this whole thing, Mircea. So Mircea takes off and raises his own army to assist, but he is captured and tortured. They burned out his eyeballs and then buried him alive. Gnarly shit by the boyars. And Vlad the Impaler's dad does not stand for this, and he ultimately tries to get his lick back, but he is killed as well in November 1447. That is what the fuck is going on in Wallachia. But our boy Vlad the Impaler is still back at the Ottoman court of Sultan Murad II. And honestly, they might be prisoners, but they're chilling. The boys are treated more as a guest than an actual prisoner, since, you know, the Ottomans used to do some insane shit to prisoners. Torture city over there. Plus, the Turks are kind of long gaming these kids and hope that one day they will be able to return them to rule Wallachia and be besties with the Ottoman Empire and hate the Hungarians. And Vlad the Impaler, now the main Vlad in our story, is learning the Ottoman way. He's learning Islam, Persian and Turkish languages, logic, warfare, horseback riding, combat, and philosophy and literature. But as Vlad grows older, he is getting more and more rebellious to Ottoman authority, and he's getting punished for being disobedient. But his brother Radu, oh, he was loving it. He was the golden boy of the Ottoman court. So Vlad might be getting his ass beat, but Radu is at the court working as a member and sparking a relationship with the Sultan's son and heir, Mehmed II. So Radu is deep in it. Or they're deep in him. Either way, Vlad the Impaler hates it. And they've been at the court for a hot fucking minute, but with the death of their father, it now means they are free to go. So Vlad the Impaler fucks off to freedom, but Radu stays behind, he joins the Ottoman court and gets his foreskin cut off. So the brothers are going in two different directions, with Radu staying very loyal to the Ottoman court, and Vlad the Impaler wanting to avenge his daddy and older brother that he believes were killed by Ottoman interference in Wallachia. Even though Vlad the Impaler thinks that the Ottoman Empire is Flop City, the Turks still think they can work with Vlad the Impaler. And since Vlad the Impaler has a very strong claim to the Wallachian throne, the Ottoman Empire provides him an army to go take it back. Very ironic, but he is around his late teens, early 20s at this point, so he is all in on himself, and he goes to Wallachia and fucks up his cousin to get that throne back. And he fucking hates his cousin, because his cousin is the reason his dad and his older brother died. Rumor has it, when he regained control of Wallachia, he invited all of the noble boyars over for a grand feast, and then had everyone he suspected of conspiring to kill his dad and brother executed. They reportedly all came to the dinner, and then Vlad the Impaler ordered all of them be stabbed and impaled. So, very on brand. But after like 2 months or so, Vlad the Impaler actually gets fucked up and removed as the leader of Wallachia when his cousin comes back into the picture and our favorite little Impaler gets sent to exile in Moldavia, where he looks for refuge from his other cousin, Stephen. But he doesn't get to settle much down there either, because then his uncle gets murdered and him and his cousin Stephen have to haul ass to Transylvania to go find John Hunyadi for help. John Hunyadi is down bad right now power-wise. He's still loosely a nobleman and has some military influence, but he doesn't have any titles. And him and Vlad are not exactly aligned politically, but they both hate the Turks, and the enemy of my enemy is my friend. For them. Vlad the Impaler needed protection, and Johnny Boy needed allies. So Vlad the Impaler is staying with him and going on political trips and rallies with him to try to garner more support for their cause. All while Vlad's evil cousin in Wallachia is getting increasingly more unpopular and isn't doing enough to stop the Turks, who are killing it, by the way. They just conquered Constantinople, and they are turning all those chapels into mosques, which obviously has the rest of Europe quaking at the possibility of an Ottoman invasion. So Vlad the Impaler takes his army to Transylvania and Wallachia to go harass the shit out of his cousin. And there's a bunch of minor battles happening all over, and crusades and holy wars popping up. But who cares about that, because Vlad the Impaler is about to do some boss shit and challenges his cousin to hand-to-hand combat. In that hand-to-hand combat, Vlad the Impaler absolutely dusted his cousin and got to avenge his father and stuff. But more importantly, got his power back in Wallachia. And he does have more power this time around. The Hungarian king gave him more land, and he gives himself some titles like Prince of Wallachia. He's kind of just doing like politics and boring shit for a bit, and his cousin Stephen from earlier is now the king of Moldavia, so that's cute. Vlad is doing his thing as the Wallachian prince. I mean, he's managing the economy and the military, he's building walls around the city, and of course, impaling people. Very Ottoman of him, honestly. And actually, impaling your enemies kinda rocks, because then you get to steal all their shit. And impalement is so on the nose for Vlad the Impaler. Well, depending who's telling the story, because some of those accounts are really shaky. Because outside of impaling, Vlad the Impaler was also known to kill his prisoners by burning them alive, leaving them to die in extreme elements, having animals rip them up, skinning them, amputating them, dissecting them. Dude, you could get boiled. What's better, Vlad the Impaler, Vlad the Boiler? Actually, Vlad the Boiler sounds like a pervert, so never mind. Horrific shit, honestly, and women typically got it the worst. But like I said, it really depends who is telling the story, because this guy was surrounded by enemies, so stories about him and other empires and kingdoms were often sensationalized and salacious ones. Like the story about him solving homelessness in Wallachia by inviting all the poor people to a grand feast and then locking the doors and burning down the building with them inside. Or that he was such an intimidating leader that they had a communal solid gold cup in the city square that they would all drink water out of, and no one stole the gold because they were so afraid of him. Thought-provoking. But back to the story. 1460, when the Ottomans sent a bunch of ambassadors to come try to negotiate with Vlad, Vlad got really offended that they wouldn't remove their turbans in his presence, so he ordered for their turbans to be nailed to their skulls and then refused to negotiate with the Ottomans. And then after that, Vlad and the Ottomans are really scheming against each other and having a lot of battles. And they're spending a lot of time brainstorming how to capture each other. Speaking of capturing him, Vlad had heard about a plan from the Ottoman Sultan. They were sending a bunch of troops to come snatch Vlad up and take him to Constantinople. Vlad, Uno reversed it, and he caught them coming through a narrow opening, blasted them with gunpowder, and then impaled them all for decoration. And now, it's on, bitch. Vlad the Impaler is on the move, and he is using his extensive knowledge of the Ottoman culture and Turkish language to infiltrate Turkish territories and camps. Because if you remember, he had been partially raised by the Ottoman Sultan, so he knew a lot about the Ottoman Empire. And he was slick with it, so he would use his Turkish to convince the guards to let him inside the territory. After Vlad would sneak into the camp, his army would follow him and they would just slaughter everyone. Then obviously impale them. And he kills tens of thousands of Ottoman soldiers and Ottoman sympathizers. So he is building himself a reputation as a baddie in Europe. But you cannot be on top forever. And it gets to a point where the Ottoman Sultan is like, enough is enough. And he sends a massive amount of troops to go take care of their little Dracula problem. This army is like 10 times the size of Vlad's army. So Vlad the Impaler is like, all right, boys, gather around. And he does what any good lunatic would do. Employ a scorched earth tactic against the Ottomans. He is poisoning the wells and the water sources. He's burning the land barren. So advancing Ottoman troops would die to the elements on the journey, and heavily implemented night raids on Ottoman camps to ambush and catch them by surprise. Also, biowarfare. Do you have the bubonic plague, tuberculosis, cholera, maybe leprosy? Well, Vlad the Impaler has a job for you. We are sending you to the Ottoman camps to be a super spreader. It's a very effective war tactic, and hey, play to your strengths. But anyway, the Turks are having a hell of a time with Vlad the Impaler, but eventually they do start advancing on Vlad and his army. And they are very outnumbered, so he sends his whole army into the mountains to stay out of sight of the Ottomans. Because Vlad the Impaler has a plan to get out of this, and it better work, because if it doesn't, they're all cooked. And now that Vlad the Impaler is in his castle and surrounded by the Ottoman army, he sends his army up into the mountains to hide from the Turks while he cooks up a plan. And it's a fucking crazy one. As nightfall approaches, the Ottomans have all gone to camp, and Vlad the Impaler dresses up as an Ottoman soldier and slips into the camp himself. He hears that the Sultan has ordered that all of the men are to stay in their tents tonight so that they don't lose their nerve in case they're attacked. He's getting the lay of the land, he figures out where the Sultan's tent is located, and then he slips out of the camp back up into the mountains to touch base with his army, where they cook up a plan that might just work. And that night, on June 17th, 1462, the plan goes into action. They surround the Ottoman camp from both sides, targeting the prisoners so that they can use them for numbers. Vlad's army starts going ham on the Turkish tents, killing around 15,000 Ottomans, however, losing over 5,000 men from their much smaller army. So it's chaos. They are stabbing, they are burning, and Vlad the Impaler marches his happy ass over to the Sultan's tent because he wants to get that Sultan's head on a stick. Vlad had miscalculated where the Sultan was sleeping, and he actually fucked up and went to the wrong tent. So he's got to hold that L, but historically, the night attack on Teragovishta is one of the most badass plans ever. They were fucking him up all night until the daylight started to peek through the clouds, and then they ran their asses back up into the hills. And in the morning, the Ottomans are shook. They're like, girl, what the fuck? What the hell was even that? We want to go home. But Sultan Mehmed was not a pussy, so he ordered them to continue on the campaign. So picture it. You're an Ottoman soldier. 15,000 of your homies just got killed at your sleepover. You've been sleeping outside for God knows how long. A bunch of your shit just got burned by the little Dracula man. And here you are, still pushing forward. When you come across a field filled with 20,000 impaled Turkish soldiers, you and the boys walk into a fucked up human forest of dead Turkish bodies on sticks. I would have walked my pasty ass home, I swear to God. And the Sultan felt the same way. Vlad had managed to shock the Turks, of all people, and the Sultan ordered for the men to just book it back home, leaving Vlad the Impaler's traitor brother Radu to run the city with his boys. And there is some like old Romanian, almost folklore about the situation that states that when Vlad the Impaler's wife saw Radu's army approaching the castle, she threw herself in the river to escape capture, claiming she'd rather be eaten by the fish than captured by the Turks. But we don't have a way to really verify that, so I don't know. But we do know that Radu takes Vlad's castle and is now ruling the region. And our boy Vlad the Impaler is fleeing to Hungary to try to round up some boys to fight the Ottomans again, because fighting the Ottomans is of course Vlad's special interest. But Hungary is under new leadership, and Corvinus, the new leader, despite the previous alliance with Vlad, turned on him and set a trap to capture and imprison him instead. Likely because Mr. Corvinus wanted to be the Holy Roman Emperor and he thought he could smooth out the Ottoman tensions by giving them a break from Vladdy the Baddie. Basically just betraying Vlad the Impaler so that he has a better shot at being the ruler of the HRE. Not that that plan worked at all if that was the reason, because Corvinus never did become the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. But anyway, Vlad's in friggin' jail for years. Between 1462 and 1466, they keep calling him an Ottoman sympathizer, which is wild as fuck. But Vlad is now working his charm with Corvinus, who has now obtained the title of King Matthias of Hungary. And in an attempt to get in good favor, Vlad spends his time in the Slammer converting to Catholicism, and also got engaged to the king's cousin, Alona. And this union really made the Hungarian king trust Vlad the Impaler. So Vlad was given more freedom and a house to live with Alona. The couple get married, they have 2 sons together, and they live a relatively quiet life for years. He of course had to promise that he was not going to go back to Wallachia and try to claim the throne, but after about a decade of dreaming of doing just that, Vlad decides it's time, and he starts to put together an army to go do a campaign. Since now it's the 1470s and his brother Radu, who had been previously ruling, has died. And now Vlad is the only brother left with a claim to the Dracula line. So Vlad, his army, and other interested military commanders go and take the throne of Wallachia back. Pretty easily too, in the summer of 1474. The new guy who had been ruling pretty much just bounced when he heard Vlad the Impaler was coming. So now our boy Vlad is back on top. But it wouldn't be all sunshine and rainbows. And in November 1476, Vlad would get his shit rocked by the Ottomans. And we have no idea what happened to Vlad during the invasion and the battles. We just know at some point he died. But the how, when, where, and why he died is still debated. We did have a lead in the 1930s when archaeologists dug up a bunch of spooky bones and stuff, but all of the evidence actually vanished. So that is very Dracula coded, actually. And in the centuries that followed, as those empires rose and fell all around the area, the story of Vlad the Impaler also changed greatly, especially when we start looking around the times of Romanian independence and the stories of Vlad the Impaler really rising as a hero and defender of the Christian faith. So to some people, he's a horrific, brutalist killer. And to some people, he's a hero. And that's the story of Vlad the Impaler. I hope you liked this one, and I am not just saying that because Vlad the Impaler will always have a special place in my heart. He's the very first series I ever did on TikTok, and he is by far my favorite historical figure to talk about because he was fucking nuts. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
You can stay, get your ass beat. Okay. You can stay, get your ass beat. All right. Plain and simple. Okay.